Dr. Begg, I thank you for your efforts on that tragic day and for testifying today to try to make sure that Newtown never happens again.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to recognize the valiant efforts of the first responders from the greater Newtown area. Thank you for your service. And to the families whose loved ones actually made it to the ER, we all tried our best. People say that the overall number of assault weapon deaths is relatively small, but you know what? Please don't tell that to the people of Tucson or Aurora or Columbine or Virginia Tech, and don't tell that to the people of Newtown.
It's heartbreaking, and it rips open the scabs from December 14th when we hear about the next tragedy. And I committed to try to afford some type of change. I can't sit back and be quiet because I knew more tragedies were gonna happen and more families were gonna be affected.
I don't know how many of y'all drive by the Pulse nightclub. I mean, I drive by it to and from work every day. And within the last week, the light on the sign has turned back on. And you know, that when I first saw that, I thought, you know, am I imagining that?
It's still kind of hard. You know, everybody throughout the hospital system celebrates how everybody was able to pull together and the good that we were able to do. But I think that that's still, you know, when you walk through the hospital and you see paintings or different tributes to the care of the Pulse victims, it still resonates with you that, you know, there were still, you know, a large number of people that never made it to the hospital, and that doesn't go away. That doesn't go away.
49 memorials to walk by is a lot.
We've all have our patients that stick out in our minds. I think, you know, the ones that follow up in our offices that we've kind of adopted, if you will. You know, I've had patients that are getting ready to go back to work. I've had a patient that needs another operation but is not mentally ready for it yet.
I got a gunshot in the low right side of my abdomen. When they take me to the hospital, I don't remember faces. I remember people who talked to me, and they just put me the IV, that's the name, the IV, and probably 30-40 minutes, they just told me they're gonna take me to a surgery. And I just remember until I wake up next morning.
Going into that room, it felt, I think it was one of the hardest things that I could ever say that I did.
Yeah, I talked to my mom that night and when I was in the hospital, and she was crying. This is the second time I hear my mom crying in my whole life. I haven't seen my mom for 11 years. The government of Mexico will bring my family 5 or 6 days later. All the nurses and doctors told me I cannot go out, but I just sit in the wheelchair and tell him, like, take me to the airport because I need to go and see my mom.
Oh my God.
The thing that I get most angry about is when I hear on the news that another tragedy has happened. Because I know it was potentially preventable. Other societies in our world don't have this happening on a regular basis.
It's amazing to me. I mean, trauma, if you look at it, if you look at what it is that we do day in and day out, we deal with terrible things, right? I mean, people who get in horrible car accidents, you know, falls, construction injuries, assaults. right? And we have studied drunk driving, right? We have studied seatbelts. Those things, you know, we know how to target them. There's educational programs. There are things that society has done to limit that stuff, right? We haven't done that with gun violence.
For a car accident that happens on any local street, you can find out how many people were in the car, whether they were wearing seatbelts, were they ejected, were they not ejected, was it a rollover, what speed were they going, very easily. Research saves lives. So why aren't we doing research in gun violence to save lives?
There are roadblocks to our being able to do that. What we have taken from this tragedy is that we have a responsibility.
In my viewpoint, there's no better way to commemorate and keep the memories alive of those that were lost and affected at the Sandy Hook tragedy by having some type of change.
Good afternoon. I was asked to just share some thoughts with regard to our response to the Pulse nightclub tragedy. 49 people ended up dying that morning, and almost 60 were injured. And it's increasing with frequency, the number of these events that we're seeing. There was nothing worse than when we read off the list of names of the victims that we had identified in the hospital, and we had 40 families basically saying, where are the rest of the names? Because those victims were still dead in the club. And I hope you never have to deal with an event like this. Unfortunately, the chances are you will.
My name is Bill Begg. I'm an emergency physician from Connecticut, a treating physician for the Newtown tragedies. Now, I just wondering if any of the panelists have the viewpoint that given we've defined this as a public health initiative, is there a role for us to be advocates for potential legislative changes? The most obvious to me is the fact that funding for trauma research is the lowest of all disease entities out there.
I think there's not only space, I think it's actually our obligation. What unifies us as our tribe is that we believe and we profess, our profession, we profess that the patient's interests come before my own. And really it's our obligation to do it.
Physically, I feel good. Sometimes I got some pain because the bullet is inside and I got some pain, but I think mentally it's the long process. For me, it's just hard to see my body with a big scar. But at the same time, and I'm pretty sure one of any of those people who died would love to have this scar and be alive with his family.